everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. So basically, my name is Arzoo, and I am a former student at Concordia University in Montreal, Quebec, in Canada. And I did this research as part of my thesis or internship, I would say, as part of my internship. And I'm going to share about what I did during my internship and during my project. So it's a qualitative research project, and it's titled as Supporting Homeschool Partnership in Early Years. So basically, what we were doing, we were trying to look at the literature review, and we realized that traditionally, learning, usually what happens in schools and in early learning sector is that traditionally all the learnings usually happen in a way that school shares the learning with families, and families try to reinforce that learning at home. With our research, we tried to flip the side and see if learning from home can really shape what happens in school. So this was our research question. And to achieve our research question, we set up with some research objectives, which were to highlight individual efforts of both families and educators to align and strengthen the existing homeschool partnerships in early years. The second objective was to provide parents with strategies to integrate learning into day-to-day life, allowing routine participation in children's learning. So this was basically given that in today's time, both parents work and it's hard for them to contribute to their children's learning. We were trying to integrate and make learning a part of everyday life. And the last and the most important research objective was to introduce a component of bidirectionality between parents and educators to make children's learning more effective. We're going to talk about this in a little while. So basically, it was a very comprehensive and a long research. The research was conducted in Concordia University's nursery, where 4 families participated in the research. It's a qualitative research. And 2 educators who were the lead educators in the nursery were a part of this research. And 1 child from each family participated in the research. So basically, we combined a lot of different methodologies into this research. And the research was divided into 4 phases. So basically, we did classroom observations. So we used running records for classroom observations between September 2023 and January 2024. And then following the classroom observations and spending time in the classroom, we did individual semi-structured interviews for both educators and parents to understand their insights about homeschool partnership, the existing homeschool partnership in the nursery. Then we moved on to a task implementation, which was 2 weeks long, which happened in March 2024, where we planned daily activities at home and at school. And then at the end, we did a focus group discussion with all the participants together to gather the feedback about this task. So from the observation, so we divided the research into pre-task and post-task. So everything that happened pre-task was the observations in the classroom and the interviews with educators and parents. And these are basically the learnings from the observation and interviews. So when we did observations and interviews, we coded the data to find out some relevant themes that came out. So it was very evident that children in the classroom who were a part of the research were very much interested in the theme of animals, food, and people around us. So those were like the top three themes that we identified. And going forward, we worked on animals because that was the predominant theme among the three, where all four kids were really interested in. There were some areas of challenges that were noted on behalf of parents and educators. So there were time constraints and exhaustion reported by both educators and parents. There were limited communication that was happening between parents and educators. There was support. So families were seeking more support for extending learning at home. There were different kind of activities that kids actually showed interest. So in the areas of math and literacy, building blocks, pretend play, and things like that. And then for the communication, existing communication was through face-to-face communication between parents and educators. There were emails sent home to parents. There were parents meeting that was happening twice a year. Documentation was happening to share progress. Parent involvement and support was ongoing. And these are like different strategies. I'm not going to go in detail considering the time, but if you have any questions, we can talk about it later. So deriving all these data from the observation and from the interviews, we learned that our key takeaway was that we need to align the task with what the children's interests were, and then encouraging both parents and educators to collaborate and enable in order to foster deeper and more meaningful learning experiences both at home and in the classroom for young children. So considering that, we went on to develop a task. And the main motive of this task was to focus on bidirectional learning, which is whether to see that learning at home complements any learning at class or vice versa. If there is any new skill or any new theme introduced in the class, how that is extended at home. So the picture at the bottom that you see is the block play. So kids actually engaged with block play and they made different things out of it. So they used the wooden blocks, the plastic blocks in the classroom to make, as you can see, Lego zoo, Lego trains, where they would put the animals and ride around. This is one example of the activity that we did in the classroom, but there were several other activities that we did. We did sensory bins to explore the habitats of different animals. We did magnetile animals. We did so many different activities in the classroom in that 2 weeks. And then we also kind of incorporated some collaboration tools for home and school. So the upper image on your left, you could see we set up a library with all the themed books. So our theme was animals. So all the books related to animals were placed in the library, and we started a animal book exchange program where each child and each family would have a library card that we created for them, and they would lend books from the school and they would take home and read it with their parents, and they would lend it for a certain days. They would sign out the books, they would take it home, read it, come back, exchange the books. And that was one of the most successful strategies that we saw in homeschool partnership. The image on the right that you see is a very great example of what I was talking about earlier, is bidirectional learning. So we focused on a lot of things. So because it was a very open-ended task, so we focused on, we followed children's interest in animals, and we followed and did a lot of activities. These are two really good examples that came up. So we introduced animal food chain in the classroom, and then one of the families went back home and they discussed about the animal food web. And then the kid actually drew, it's not really visible in here, but they made this food web at home by themselves with the family support. So demonstrating actually that he understood how the food web works with animals. So this is the example of how a learning was introduced in the classroom, and then how it got extended at home. On the other hand, if you look at this animal skeleton part, this is something that the family shared with the educators in the classroom, that they read a book about animal anatomy, and the kid really got interested in animal bones and animal organs, and they were doing some really good activities related to that. And because the parent were able to share that they did something new related to animals or related to the existing theme, we extended the learning in the classroom with this activity where we printed out the silhouettes of the animals, and then we gave them these Q-tips to paste it on the silhouettes to represent the animal bones. So this is what we tried to do through our research and through our task overview. And after the 2-week long task, we went on to do the focus group discussions so that we could gather the feedback from the participants about how they felt about the task. So there were some challenges and limitations. So there were certainly some learnings that happened after the uh, focus group discussions. So we learned that although the entire task really helped both the parents and the educators to come closer in terms of engagement, but what happened really was there were still gaps between home and school communication. So there were not clear communication, there was low early engagement, meaning that initial participation was from parents was really limited, and we did not see a lot of, so we introduced, as part of our collaboration tool, we introduced a learning tree. So we had a learning tree outside the classroom where the parents were really encouraged to write down the activities that they were doing home, so the educators would know what is happening, and vice versa, the educators would contribute to the learning tree board, where they would add an activity that they did in the classroom. So the entire community, entire nursery school would know what's happening in the classroom and what is happening at home, the different activities that the kids are being engaged in. But what happened with that learning tree activity, initially in the first week, we did not see any engagement happening. Nobody was contributing to the tree. And it started like in the middle of the second week, where parents and educators started contributing to it. But during the focus group discussion, some of the parents felt really pressured to contribute to that tree and felt a sense of guilt that they were not able to match the other parents or what other families were doing. So there was a pressure built with that learning tree. So maybe it was not a good idea to use that learning tree, was our learning. And the engagement came on that learning tree through comparison and not collaboration. And that was not our Our focus was to collaborate and let everybody know that what is happening in the community, in that small piece of community. But it went the other way. The other collaboration tool that we used was on our parent board. We had the question of the week where parents and educators would contribute with a question that they might see a kid asking in the classroom about animals or at home about animals. So that was another collaboration tool, and we placed a lot of collaboration tools in the process, but there were certain limitations to the research because I was a researcher and I had a dual role, like facilitating the task, which reduced my ability to objectively observe the outcomes both at home and at school. And there were some time pressures, so parents struggle to balance tasks with daily responsibilities. These were some of the learnings that we learned from the focus group, that leveraging children's interest was serving as a catalyst for engagement and learning, both actually in classroom and at home. And effective communication can become an important part of the task to maintain homeschool connection. There was continuous efforts on parents' end to promote daily activities at home, engaging in conversations, reinforced that importance of education beyond the classroom. It is important to regularly assess the children's need. That could really help to ensure that the experiences of young children remain relevant in all the scenarios. There was something called as comprehensive learning circles that signified holistic learning experiences at both ends. So this is basically the bidirectional learning, so learning at home and learning at school, how that came together as a comprehensive learning circle for young children. While the activities might have bridged the two environments in some ways, but there was still a gap that remained in passing the information between home and school. Considering all of this limitation and challenges that we faced in the research, our future recommendations would be that we need more flexibility in engaging children with diverse learning preferences. We need to establish clear learning objectives for each activity that we do in the classroom so that we can help provide better clarity for families, provide regular opportunities for parental involvement serves a very good experience for both families and young children. Adapting learning tasks to children's evolving interests is important. Keeping the task measurable. So one of the things that we did in our research was that our activities and our task was very open-ended, and parents reported in the focus group discussion that it was hard to measure what the learning outcomes were. So keeping the tasks measurable in future research will be what our recommendation would be. And increasing transparency in communication between parents and educators can really help the scenario. So despite all the challenges, bidirectional learning task highlighted the importance of aligning activities with children's interest. The project was successful in fostering increased homeschool engagement, and everybody, both families and educators, kind of appreciated what the project did for them, but it does require improved communication strategies going forward. So more structured communication, flexible but yet measurable tasks, and extended engagement can be critical in enhancing homeschool partnerships and supporting children's holistic development. That's it from my end. If you have any questions, you can ask them now, or I have my email address on the screen. You can reach out to me if you have any questions.